I'm Mel Torrefranca, the founder of Lost Island Press, and in today's video we're talking about the 5 types of character deaths. That way you can identify them and nail them in your own story. Please be warned that there will be spoilers in this video, so I will be mentioning some characters who die in popular books, TV shows, and movies, so watch this at your own risk. Type 1. Sacrificial. When a character chooses to die for a noble cause. A few examples of this are Baymax from Big Hero 6, who stays behind to save Hero and leaves him a way out. Bing Bong from Inside Out, who jumps from the wagon so Joy can escape. And a bit of a more mature example, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars A New Hope, who lets Vader strike him down so Luke and the others can get away. So how exactly do you write a sacrificial character death well? A reader on the Lost Island Press newsletter says that emotional significance is very important. If a character dies, it won't really matter to us unless we understand what the character meant to the protagonist. That means you need to show us how much the character cares for this person or thing they are protecting and will later die for. If they are sacrificing themselves for a person, you need to show a bond between these characters leading up to that sacrifice. If they're sacrificing themselves for an object, like a magic artifact that will save the world, then you want to show their commitment to that early on. This could be prior attempts to protect that artifact, or an expression of care they have for what protecting that artifact represents. So, in the case of a magical artifact that will save the world, it would be the character's care for the world, which could be shown through protecting the community or saving strangers. This is very common in superhero type plots. The key is to make their choice to die believable. It should feel like the natural decision based on all of the commitment and care they've displayed earlier on in the story. Before we move on to type 2, I want to bring up something you should avoid if you are working on a sacrificial death. This was brought up by another reader on the Lost Island Press newsletter, and I thought it was important to address. One interesting death in Doctor Who is that of Clara Oswald. She made the decision to sacrifice herself to save someone else. Her death was also meaningful for the Doctor's character arc, as he struggled to come to terms with her death in the next episode. And then the show ruined it by making a science fiction loophole to cheat death, to give her a happy ending. This unfortunately managed to undercut the emotional but satisfying goodbye her character had been given. This was also the same problem I had with the character death of Toby in the Troll Hunters movie, Rise of the Titans. Now, I have been a long-term fan of Troll Hunters. It's an amazing show. I love the original series, but a lot of viewers in this fandom, myself included, have vowed to pretend that this movie does not exist, in the same way that people like to pretend the first Avatar: The Last Airbender movie does not exist. The issue that a lot of people have with the Troll Hunters movie is with the reversal of Toby's death, as well as the reversal of some other plot decisions that they made in the original series. My conclusion is that if you are going to reverse a sacrificial death, it still has to mean something. You can't just bring them back and everyone's happy, everything's normal and fine. There needs to be some kind of loss. Maybe it's their memories, maybe they have to live with some kind of physical problem that they didn't have before. You can't erase their sacrifice completely, otherwise you are also going to completely erase the satisfaction around their death. So long story short, you absolutely can have a sacrificial death that is reversed, but you need to make sure there is some kind of crack in the world that can never be glued shut. Their death and their choice still needs to have an impact on them, even if they survive. Alright, we have started off with a long one today, but let's move on to type 2. Consequential. When a character dies as an unintended result of someone's pursuit of a goal, whether it's their own or another's. Either way, their death is a result of ambition. Some examples of this are Tadashi from the movie Big Hero 6, who dies when he runs into a burning building in an effort to save Callahan. We also have Uncle Ben from the Spider-Man movie, who dies as a result of Peter purposefully letting the thief go. And then we have Lizzie from the TV show The Walking Dead, who is killed as a direct result of her murdering her own sister. The sting of a consequential death comes from knowing that the character could have survived if they or another party just played their cards a little differently. To write a consequential death well, you need to draw a clear line between the goal that is being pursued and the character's death. In other words, make it extremely clear how the pursuit of that goal, whether it's their own or someone else's, directly led to their death. You want them to think, if only they didn't do that one thing, they'd still be alive. A reader on our newsletter particularly likes consequential deaths that are a result of the protagonist's actions. Here's the technique described. First of all, we need to care about the character, and in order for us to care, the protagonist should care about them. Then, they should probably get into lots of close scrapes, so it seems like they have plot armor. And finally, their death should be slightly or entirely the protagonist's fault. That way, it feels like it could have been prevented, and it hurts all the more. The ultimate goal with writing a consequential death is to show the cause and effect. That way, the reader is left imagining all of the other scenarios in which this character could have turned out okay. Type 3. Pointless. When a character dies for no reason, and through no fault of their own. Unlike a sacrificial death, a character who dies a pointless death isn't choosing to die. And unlike a consequential death, a character who dies a pointless death doesn't die as a result of anyone pursuing a specific goal either. Put simply, a pointless death isn't the result of a choice or goal. It feels kind of random. The reason why these kinds of deaths hurt so hard is because it mirrors how unfair real life can be. Some examples of pointless character deaths are Leslie from the book and movie The Bridge to Terabithia, who dies in a creekside accident, and the deer mom in the movie Bambi, who is shot by hunters. A lot of times, pointless deaths are the result of natural disasters or accidents like car crashes. To write a pointless death well, let's consider some notes from our readers. For me, the biggest thing character deaths have to have is purpose. It makes me really annoyed when an author adds in a death only for drama's sake and to emotionally devastate the reader. Aiming to evoke emotion is a good thing, but killing a character just to upset readers feels like immature storytelling. A character shouldn't die just for shock value. Their death should leave a mark. It should feel like the other characters actually cared for the dead person. Thus, aftermath is crucial. Character deaths, especially those of beloved ones, are done well when they have meaning. Since characters are plot devices, their deaths should also serve a purpose in driving the plot forward. Death for the sake of drama never sits well with readers and drives them away. What I've taken from this is that a death may be pointless, but the aftermath shouldn't be. Readers will only ever accept a pointless death if it has a strong impact on the remaining living characters and makes them grieve. So while a pointless death doesn't need to directly impact the plot, it needs to indirectly impact the plot through the mindsets and actions of the living. Type 4. Retrospective death. When a character is already dead, and the story of how and why they died is told by uncovering the past. A character who dies a retrospective death could be either a main character or a supporting character or a side character. It really doesn't matter. An example of a main character who goes through a retrospective death is Susie Salmon from the book and movie The Lovely Bones, who is murdered and narrates her story from the afterlife. Another example is Malin Vandross from my novella Malin. Malin's death is so good because it impacts Blimmery's development as a person. It's inspiring and meaningful. Malin from Malin has a very interesting death because it's stated from the very beginning that she's going to die. An example of a more minor character who goes through a retrospective death is Jack Pearson from the TV show This Is Us, who dies from smoke inhalation after saving his family from a house fire. Another example is Emmeline Pike from my novel Capsule. I won't tell you how she dies because that is a major spoiler, but if you are curious to find out, you can read my novel Capsule for free by clicking the link in the description. To write a retrospective death well, create suspense around the how and why, so readers are piecing together the story as the plot unfolds. As you can tell, I love retrospective deaths. I've used them quite a few times in the books that I've written, and the reason why I love them is because they naturally set up for a mystery. This means it's a prime target for lots of red herrings and foreshadowing. For example, in This Is Us, Jack Pearson's death is teased for 2 seasons. The writers deliberately led viewers to believe that he died in a house fire, but when the fire episode finally airs, we see that he makes it out of the fire alive, which raises a lot of questions. It's later revealed that he died a delayed death of smoke inhalation, which led to a heart attack in the hospital. So have fun with it. Create an interactive experience where readers are left guessing how and why the character died and are maybe sometimes thrown in the wrong direction. Type 5. Ticking time bomb. When a character's death feels inevitable, and the only question is how long they can outrun it. A ticking time bomb death is quite similar to a retrospective death, but the key difference is that you don't know with 100% certainty whether this character is going to die or not. It's heavily implied, and you know it's most likely going to be what happens, but there's still a tiny little sliver of hope. This is a really common type of death with terminal illness stories. For example, Hazel and Augustus from the book and movie The Fault in Our Stars, who die from cancer, and Zach from the movie Clouds, which is based on a true story, who dies from osteosarcoma. This is also very common in fight to the death type stories where only a certain number of people are destined to survive. There are some characters like Rue, for example, who you know aren't going to make it, you just don't know how and when their fate is going to catch up to them. To write a ticking time bomb death well, really allow their death to haunt every moment in the story. Allow the other characters, and through them the reader, the chance to grieve this character before they even die. It's also a really good idea to take advantage of the fact that this isn't a retrospective death. It's not confirmed in the plot that this character is 100% without a doubt going to die. So even though it seems mostly hopeless, give them a glimmer of hope, like a new treatment that could cure them, or a chance to escape the situation they've found themselves in. And then of course you want to snatch that hope away, because those letdowns are going to make their inevitable death hit even harder. And now before we wrap up, I want to share 3 tips for writing a strong character death that can apply to any of these 5 types we've discussed in the video. The first is to ensure that the character you kill off feels real. Give them goals, motivations, likes, and dislikes. Write them like they are going to live forever, and then when they die, it's not just them that is dying, it is their dream too, and that hits even harder. The second tip is to really lean into the grief the other characters feel after this character dies. Grief in writing tends to hit harder than the death itself. When authors let their characters grieve, they force the readers to realize all the implications of the person's death and what their loss means to the tone of the book. Prim dying at the end of The Hunger Games absolutely stole my heart, not necessarily because of her death, but because Katniss spends the next chapter or 2 emotionally recovering. Make sure that the weight of this character's death is reflected by how the remaining living characters grieve and react to that loss. And the third tip is more of a mindset thing, and that's to make it your goal as the author to grieve this character. And the reason why I say this is because there are a lot of memes in the writing community about how authors are evil and get enjoyment in making readers suffer. I feel like there is some truth to that. I mean, at the end of the day, what every author wants is to have their book have an emotional impact on the person reading it, right? You, as the person writing this story, are the most emotionally connected to these characters. You know this story inside and out. You are going to be more emotionally impacted by this book, sorry to break it to you, probably much more than anyone who ever ends up reading it. So if you are not emotionally impacted by this character death, then your readers probably aren't going to be either. Quite a few readers who submitted the character death form, I featured some of them in this video, mentioned a specific character death that I had in Underground Royalty as a good example of a strong character death, and I don't want to talk about it because it is a major spoiler, but I will say that I sobbed so hard while I was writing that scene, which was not really expected. I had never been so emotionally impacted by a death that I've written before, and I truly believe that is the strongest character death I've ever written, and the most I've ever seen it emotionally impact readers as well. So I think ultimately the goal as an author should be not to impact your readers, but to impact yourself through this character death, and that's going to reap the biggest rewards in the end. In summary, these are the 5 types of character deaths. We'll do a little rapid fire at the end here. I'll describe each type of death and give you one key tip on how to pull it off well. 1. Sacrificial death. When a character chooses to die for a noble cause. Show us how much they care for who or what they'll die protecting, so the reader believes their choice when the time comes. 2. Consequential death. When a character dies as an unintended result of someone's pursuit of goal, whether it's their own or another's. Make it obvious how the pursuit of a certain goal led to their death, so the reader can imagine alternative scenarios in which everything turned out okay. 3. Pointless death. When a character dies for no reason and through no fault of their own. Allow their death to impact the plot by affecting the living character's emotions, goals, and actions, so the reader doesn't feel that it's truly pointless in the end. 4. Retrospective death. When a character is already dead, and the story of how and why they died is told by uncovering the past. Create an engaging mystery around the how and why, filled with foreshadowing and red herrings, so the reader is actively piecing together the death as the story unfolds. 5. Ticking time bomb death. when a character's death feels inevitable, and the only question is how long they can outrun it. Have a looming sense of doom weigh down every scene, and add flickers of false hope before the inevitable kicks in. Anyways, that's all for our video about character deaths. Thank you so much for watching, and as a final reminder, you can get my book Capsule for free by clicking the link in the description. You'll also be joining the Lost Island newsletter, so you'll have the opportunity to participate in surveys and have your responses potentially featured in videos like this one. And before you leave, I would seriously love to know, what is the most impactful character death you've ever experienced, whether it be from a book, a movie, TV show, or a video game, and what kind of character death was it out of these 5? I don't really watch too much anime these days, but I will say that when I was a complete weeb back in high school, the 2 deaths that probably hit me the hardest were the ones in Your Lie in April and Assassination Classroom. Those were absolutely brutal. The death in Your Lie in April was a ticking time bomb death, and the death in Assassination Classroom was a sacrificial death. Again, I would love to hear from you, so please leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, get lost.